Hello, Adam Godan. I'm here, and thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this. It's an honor, as always, and just some things I want to get into. I'm trying to make it a concise video for everyone, and so there's so many layers of you know, to life. Life is so complex. And there's so many layers, and some layers they add positive value and negative value, and there's so many there's discrimination, sexism. Like there's so many layers that add negative value, and so that there's so many things that just hurt humanity that we are our own detriments, and one of those things is jealousy and envy. And gotta tell you a little story that when I was growing up, when around high school, maybe like around my teenage years. Well, this dog this dog keeps barreling through this. I'm sorry, this dog keeps barreling through this computer. It keeps moving it. But I saw this movie that I don't know if anyone ever recall that show where there's like these kid millionaires. They're like 5 years old. And they're like, I'll get 1 million. Like, oh yeah, I get 500 million. Oh, and they're like these kid businessmen. Like they're like 12 years old and they got like 10 Ferraris and like people are watching this like, oh my gosh, right? So people can barely struggle to get by. So I remember I watched this show and my mother, like I said, at a young age, my mother wanted to watch this and I was green with envy. I could not handle that these 12-year-olds were multi-millionaires and they were like these big shots, right? Like calling, selling, buying, doing their thing. And God bless them. But the point is that I was green with envy. I turned the TV off. So change the channel. I cannot watch this. I cannot stand watching this, freaking 7-year-old with a Ferrari. So, that they can't even drive. But just to make my point that as I grew older, there's like this jealousy, right? Like they have what I can't, like it hurt my self-esteem. Like I want to be that, right? Like I want to be successful. And like this money is like this barometer for success, right? So, but the point is that as I grew older, right, and I grew more mature, and I started spiritually progressing and doing my own thing. I started to realize instead of thinking of it as I'm jealous they have what I don't have, I started seeing it as good for them. You know what I'm saying? Like just good for them because they are where I want to be. If I was rich and successful, would I want these haters like being jealous? No, I wouldn't want people being jealous. So if I want to be that level, why would I do the same thing to them? Why would I do that? Why would I throw that hatred and that envy and that jealousy? You know what? Instead of having that jealousy, respect instead. Like this dog. Hold on a second. This dog is in a domestic terrorist with this computer, so I apologize for any shaking of the equator. But anyway, so the point, right? So I overcame that. That I started to realize that good for them. That I was happy for their success. That instead of seeing it as this negative, right? Like it's being just jealous. Good for them. Good for them. And so wish people the best. To wish people the best. I feel like sometimes it's human nature to want someone to fail, to want the best out of everyone because that reflects on you. Instead of seeing it as it affects your self-esteem that this makes you less if someone's greater, I guess, but whatever barometer you want to make of success. But but to be glad for someone, if that's where you want to be too, if you want to be successful and someone else is successful, it should be respect and inspiration, not this this envy or any negative emotion you may have. So important. And before I transition to my next topic, this is a very important video. All of them are important, but this is very important with a capital V, two capital V's just right next to each other. But is assumptions. And I just want to make note that my other video, right? I was talking about science, how science is limited, right, to our five senses. That it doesn't actually necessarily capture reality, just what we can make as most true based on our observations. And did not think that was too controversial of a statement, but I even explicitly said at the video, that we use science. It's silly not to use science. We have to think scientifically just to put it in context. Because science without context is just numbers. You need context to put reason to make it something. I had this troll say, oh, you can use your common sense. I'm using my science. I'm like, dude, I never said anything bad about science. I just said keep in context and understand the factors involved in making the science. And also you start getting to confirmation bias that someone has a hypothesis, so they set the test so it'll support their hypothesis, that it'll support the study. And so, no, it's just called critical thinking. It's not a diss of science. I mean, common sense, right? That's not something that should be, scrutinized, and it's like, oh, you believe in common sense. I mean, what does this world come to when it's this competition? It's this competition between common sense and science. Why not both? So, but again, keeping both in context. And so, related to that, assumptions, right? Assumptions. That's what I wanted to get into also. Here's a little, segue, I guess you could say, but, as we like to say in the field. But, so assumptions. So I'll tell you another little story that, I'm a musician. I love jamming my tunes. I'm a little bit of a narcissist. It's hard to get into other people's music and just bumping my tunes, right? So I drive around my car. I don't really like going on busy roads. I live in a residential area. So, I don't want to risk, getting in some a very extremely unfortunate incident, and driving when I can just be in a residential road, just go 30 miles per hour, just relax, and just go around. So as I'm doing this, inevitably there will be some people walking outside, right? If it's a good day, especially, sunshine, everyone's kids riding on their bikes, and life is good, and so I'll be going around, right? And when I see bystanders, I turn my music down because I try to be respectful, right? So I don't like, if I'm in a residential road, I keep the music, I tilt the music down, I like blast the music. But if I was just a bystander walking the street, and this car was blaring their music, I'd be like, okay, dude, we get it, stop. So, I am trying to be courteous to that. And so, but the point is, when I go through, I might pass through the same people several times. And so there's been a few times where I've drove around because that's my path. That's my desired route. And I'll pass through the same people multiple times. Now, assumptions. Now, someone in that perspective can easily see, and it may seem completely justified, maybe convinced, right? Convinced that this person that's driving by is stalking me, is somehow knows me, is like, taking note of me, when in reality, all I'm merely doing is just riding on a residential street so I don't have to go on a busy road, so I don't have to risk a very unfortunate accident or something, similar along those lines, or, even just, anything. So I just stay in a residential road, and they could easily be thinking this guy's stalking me, but no. So assumptions. I'll give you another example. When I was a kid, I was a good looking young man, right? I'll just say it like that. Growing up, so outside of school, I was waiting for someone to pick me up. I believe it was my sister. My memory's not that good, but I distinctly remember I went into I was waiting for someone to pick me up, and there's this car parked, right? So I was looking in his mirror, in the side view mirror, just I look at myself, just to make sure the hair's good, make sure everything's looking good, everything's matching, right? So. And then someone who worked at the school came out and was like, I know you're trying to steal something from that car. And I'm like, no, I'm just like looking at myself in the mirror. So it just goes to show assumptions. Like we are so convinced when we see something. So there's an observation, which is basically an inference. And when we start talking about critical thinking, we start breaking it down with that, like that. And so we need to be critical before we start introducing logic, and logic goes hand in hand together. But that's where the common sense comes. Common sense comes through critical thinking. That you need to ask critical questions, and that is what it means to have common sense. So it's not a competition between science and common sense. Quite the contrary, my friends. Use both with context, as I've said. But the point is that that's my crush word of the day. I think I've said that like 6 times, but the person was convinced, and sometimes we're so convinced, right? Like we see things. We have this inference, right? Like there's this data, there's this visual, and we draw our own inference. Like we're processing what it is. Like, okay, it's like a computer processing, loading, like trying to go to a web page, like loading and processing, and it becomes either this assumption, this conclusion, or this observation. And so, and so not making these assumptions, that comes when we meet people. That I think that another what's related. What I want to add into this video as related to everything I've said is, making assumptions of people. And so I think that if you thought the divisiveness, right, like especially generated from the media, the divisiveness, the hatred, if you thought that was bad from the Republican Democrat thing, right? And I mean, I'm not saying you, like you watch this video, just people in general. And, if people thought that was bad, this whole Trump, Hillary, like if all of this, if you thought that was bad, now we have this division of the unvaccinated and the vaccinated, right? So now it's just one more thing to divide us. That people who are vaccinated are told to stay away. That this is the very stripe of society, the very lowest of society. Don't dare get injected with this RNA vaccine. They're the scum of society, even though it doesn't affect transmissibility. I had to be slow. I'm sorry. I'm saying, but so assumptions, right? So we divide people now, even like by their vaccination status, and that you are looked differently by society as a member of society, a contributing good person for making a health decision. And now a health decision is so much more personal than a candidate. So if you thought politics was personal, now this is a different level of personal. Now it's your medical status, and it's being used as a tool to divide us. And we have to come together. And that's the point of this video, that we must come together. That, there's a superstructure, right? They want this. They want this chaos. You look at the media, they control the media, everything goes along with it, the propaganda, gatekeeping, you name it, agenda setting, with everything that goes on with the media and all this division that goes on. Now, the more that the media divides, the more we should come together. That should be our call to action. That the worse the media is, okay, well, let's come together even more. Because if we all just came together, and it doesn't matter if you're vaccinated, it doesn't matter if someone put a needle in your arm and pulled the trigger in you, it doesn't matter if you don't want a vaccination or you can't get vaccination medical status, it doesn't matter whether anything. The only thing that matters is that in terms of society is, do you want to be a contributing member of society? Do you want what's best for society? That is the question. If we can rally and have a call to action around that question, do we all want what's best for our community, our country, where we come from? Do we want what's best for that? If we're all on the same page, it doesn't matter if you vote Democrat or Republican or Ron Paul, or vote for that guy who claimed he was a time traveler, or voted for yourself. So, what I'm saying is that all of this is just tools of division, that in this age of chaos, and we always wonder, what are the answers? What are the answers? We feel helpless, right? Like we feel helpless. Like, what can we do? But we don't realize that we have all the power in the world. We don't realize we have all the power in the world if we just simply came together. And what I mean by that is this no toxicity, this unity, that we're on the same page of humanity. If we could all rally around our community, do we want what's best for our community? Do we want what's best for the world? Do we want what's best for the world? If we all agree that on the same page, that we want what's best and morally best and ethically and practically best for this world, then it doesn't matter what, if you want more taxes or less taxes, or if you should pay more on beef, or if all of that is just trivialities. It's trivialities. All of that doesn't matter. All of that is just a distraction. The illegal immigrant, it can be a bad thing, right? It looks like, there's with the border, but these are just distractions. These are just issues. These are issues to divide us. We don't realize that these are distractions, that we rally behind our humanity, and we come together. No argumentative, no toxicity, when we recognize we see each other as brothers. And so there's no need to feel helpless. Go out of your way to spread kindness to that stranger. What do I mean by coming together? Spread kindness to that stranger. Have a conversation with that mailman who's used to everyone just giving him treating them like an object, treating them like an ends mean. Be that change you want to be in the world. Kindness. That is huge. And that is related to everything, that treating people with kindness. And even when we debate people, to show that kindness, that tact, right? That through like Facebook and social media, it's so easy to lose that tact because it's so informal. There's no tone. Sometimes people make jokes. There's a lot of jokesters out there, and people don't know if they're being ironic or not. And and they end up trolling people, and it turns into disaster. So people speak in a certain way through Messenger or social media in a way they wouldn't in reality. So it creates this illusion that everyone's just in this angry world where people, have you ever had like a really bad day, right? Like your boss is yelling at you, your significant other's giving you a hard time, like your car engine broke down, then you see some comment from someone opposite political party, like you go on this tirade, so just to keep things in perspective and not knowing that we are all going through different things, that if we all want what's best for the world, what's best for humanity, that's what we should rally behind, not behind this facade, this absolute facade and fraud of politics that's merely meant to divide. It's a distraction. It's team red, team blue. It's irrelevant. Your vaccination status, irrelevant. Our humanity, very relevant. The only thing that should be relevant, that binds us together. So realize that we are on team humanity, and we do not let the media trick us into thinking that we should avoid the vaccinated or the unvaccinated, that we must all come together. And if you are really afraid of being near someone who is vaccinated and unvaccinated, okay, you could do the social distancing. Do the social distancing thing. Don't touch your face, stay 6 feet away, but we can't just avoid people. That's the psychological strain that does to people, to just avoid people. We have to be inclusive of people and all of their beliefs. And this is something, I don't mean to be preaching, but this is just also very relevant. I'm not, if you were watching this video, I'm not necessarily speaking to you, because this is information you very much agree with and know, and has preceded this video that you understand. But I think that we have to stop this illusion that we're divided, that based on very, in essence, very trivial things. I mean, how trivial is it that a vaccination? I mean, why is like this gold standard of division? I mean, how arbitrary, right? Like, it's the things that divide us are so arbitrary. So arbitrary. So I mean, it's just it's there's this chaos, and to maintain that faith and to come together and to be tolerant and kind. Come together, be kind, spread this love to a stranger, to a human. Doesn't matter what country they're from, doesn't matter what ethnicity they're from, religion, you name it. You name it. They could be a Scientologist. I mean, if anyone's a Scientologist watching this, don't take this at this, but Scientology in the mainstream culture is viewed as like this very fringe and sometimes sinister thing. I'm just saying it like it is, but no disrespect to someone who's a Scientologist watching that. Just by the mainstream, it's viewed that way. But you just know that if someone is coming from a place of wanting to improve the world, and peacefully, morally, and help humanity and improve humanity, it doesn't matter whether you've got a needle in your arm or whether you got a red shirt on. Adam Godan, thank you for watching.